In 2023, the global compost industry was estimated to be worth about $7.5 billion. It's projected to grow by 6.3%. So that means that by 2030, it's going to be worth in excess of $13 billion. It's incredible. Now, some regions of the world are leading the charge in this. North America and Europe is a big player in this particular industry, but other countries like Southeast Asia and Japan are getting into this as well, because they are understanding the need to reduce their waste and recycle as much as possible, and also be more aware of organic growing practices. Certainly that's the case in Europe and North America. So it's a good thing in some ways, but it has some pitfalls that we need to be aware of. So how many of us buy compost in bags from our local DIY store or garden centre? I do, and you're going to see why I do that in just a second. But let's look at how much that actually costs. So here in Hungary, southern Hungary, continental warm climate, I use a fair bit of it, as you'll see in a sec, and it costs me around about £10 or $12 for a 50-litre bag, and that's about the same kind of price as is in the US. I mean, I did some quick research, but if you think that's different, multi-purpose standard compost, I think, is around about $12. But let me know if it's different. Maybe I've missed something there. But in the UK, it's half that price. So what do I buy multi-purpose compost for? Well, primarily for me, it's to start off my seeds. I'm looking for a light mixture where it's going to allow the seed to germinate and push through into the light to continue growing. And then from there I can transplant it on, either out directly into the growing beds where we've already applied our compost that we make here ourselves, as a lot of you should know by now, or to be potting on into a bigger container before it's ready to be then transplanted out when the weather warms, for example, tomato. Going back to the point of buying compost in bags, from what I see a lot of on social media forums that I'm part of, there's an awful lot of people who are experiencing difficulties in getting a good quality product from a bag that they're buying in their local store. With demand increasing for this bag product, it's looking to me like the quality is going down a fair bit. That's the kind of information I'm getting from social media groups that I'm involved with. And so if you can't find a good quality product, what can you do? Well, how about making your own? Is that possible? Well, maybe it is, and maybe it's not as hard as you think. So now what we'll do is I'm going to show you a couple of examples of a bag of compost that I've got and what I'm using it for. And then I'll show you a mix that I've made up using part of my own homemade compost here, but also another product that we have on the Tanya, so it can show you how I get around this kind of thing. And the reason why I'm showing you that is because it's not always possible for me to get a good quality product from a bag of compost. So I need to be able to make sure that if I can't get it in a bag, I've still got something that I can use. And ideally what I want to be doing is to be self-sufficient in compost. So let's have a look at these two different examples. And then, so in this particular box here, I've got the multi-purpose compost out of one of the bags that I have here. And as you can see, it's quite fine, it's very light, but it does the job. Sometimes you might find a few little bits and pieces in your product. For example, there's a little piece of wood there. You can get around that by using a sieve. And this is the kind of sieve that I use. Very easy to buy. I've got this one off Amazon. That's got a 8mm mesh in there. And you can normally get them with 4 different size meshes, and the lowest one goes down to 4mm, and I use that sometimes when I'm sieving if I want to make a seed starter mix, for example. So that's the multi-purpose compost from a bag in one of those boxes, and the reason why I use it for this particular application, in here I'm going to be growing lettuces, and I want to be able to put these at the back of the house, as I've mentioned before, in a continental warm climate. For me to be able to grow lettuce leaves or salad leaves effectively, I need to get them out of direct sunlight. So on the back of the house, this is perfect for me to set these boxes up, and using that is a great way to do it. But there's another alternative. Now this is another way of getting compost into your system, and what I've got in here is a mixture of homemade compost And also I've got some green waste in here as well. Now, the thing is that I understand that not many of you will be having the kind of quantities that I've got here of the green waste. But because I've been doubling the size of our growing spaces, as regular viewers of you are going to know, I've had to get that in. But when you're looking at this, it is quite coarse. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pop some into the sieve, and then we will see what it looks like when it goes through. So just by giving this a gentle shake, is your head going dizzy because of my movements? So this is a 6mm mesh. So you can see the big lumps in here. So this is from the garden compost, and then there's bits of debris from part of the green waste. We just put that to one side. Now that's 6mm, so it is still quite coarse, but that's perfectly okay for me to be able to use in a pot, or even on top of a bed as a dressing. I would use that to go into another pot, similar to the one we've just been seeing from the for the salad leaves. So, you know, that's another way of doing it. So how easy is it to actually make compost? Regular viewers are going to know I'm obsessed with this stuff, and I've got lots of videos on the channel all about it. But basically, the principle is that you're mixing brown materials. So you're looking at things like dead plants, cardboard, leaves, you name it, a brown material, which is your carbon source. And then you're looking for green materials like your nitrogen. So you can use grass clippings, you can use green leaves, you can use your vegetable peelings from the garden, your garden waste as you're harvesting. There's so many different things. The list is endless. I even hear people saying that you can't put grass clippings into the compost because the seeds will germinate. Well, come on, think about that. If you're cutting your grass, you're not going to have the seeds on the grass in the first place. So your grass clippings won't have any seeds, so there's nothing to germinate. There's a lot of myths out there, and the more complicated the process becomes, the harder it is for you to get a good product. It is so easy. But once all those ingredients are in your space or your container or however you wish to do it, bacteria starts getting to work on breaking down and decomposing all of those materials to create your compost. It's a very simple system. All it requires is the materials you add to it, needs some water, and it needs some air, and that's all. And as I've often said, something else you might want to get your hands on if you can is a good quality pitchfork. So why is it good for our growing spaces and or our gardens? Well, because basically those bacteria are creating such a system in whereby you're then able to allow the nutrients to be absorbed by the plant through the bacteria within that growing medium that you've created yourself. It's a very simplistic way of putting it, but basically all the life forms in the soil trade the nutrients with the plants, and they want their sugars from those plants, and the plants want the nutrients. So basically it's a deal. That's all it's about. So the more life you've got, the more deals you're going to create, and the healthier the plants you get. That's a very basic way of putting it. That in essence is what it's all about. So why not look at making your own compost? You don't need massive areas to do it, and really at the end of the day, the amount of compost you need is dependent on how much you're growing. So the more space you have to grow something, the more compost you're going to want. Makes sense. So therefore you're going to need a bigger area to produce your own. And you know, we've got quite a big area here. We use the 3-bay pallet system here to make our own compost. And in our last video that talked about how we were comparing the beds that are now 2 years old as opposed to newly created beds, you can see the difference that compost has actually made, not only to our plants, but the soil life in general, because I had absolutely nothing here when we started here 3 years ago. So it does make a big difference. In making your own, you're going to be surprised just how easy it is. It really isn't difficult. Don't get hung up and you've got to have an exact measurement of this and an exact measurement of that. You don't need to do it. Just chuck it all in there and get it started. But you want to keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate it, because the more complications there are there, the more chances it can go wrong. And you are going to be amazed at just how fast the process takes for you to be able to have your own homemade compost. It will not look like the stuff that comes out of the bag. It's your own. You can't imitate that. It's your own product, and you want to be proud of it, and you will be proud of it. And the other great thing about it is you'll save yourself an absolute fortune in buying the stuff in. You'll have a much better quality product because you know what's gone in there, and you'll be less reliant on buying it in. So now, if you want to learn more about how to make your own compost at home, here's a couple of videos for you to look at. One of them includes how to make use of the leaves that you get every autumn or fall if you're in the US, and how you can incorporate those into your composting process that will keep it going through the winter months. Let me know how you get on, but for now, take care, and I'll catch you next time.